Many different forms of life exist in the lands between, and precious few of them are actually respected within the belief system of the Golden Order. The ancient dragons were their enemies until Godwyn the Golden made peace with them to end their war. Albinaurics are seen as abominations, and many fled to the Halig Tree to escape persecution. The misbegotten were kept as slaves due to their connection to the primordial crucible. But arguably, the creatures that have it the worst under this rule are the Omen. When one is born an Omen under the rules of the Golden Order, they must have their horns removed, which more often than not kills them when they're still babies. The only exception to this is those born from the Erdtree's royal line, which are instead banished underground, imprisoned for eternity. Of course, there must be those that hide their Omen children, as we can encounter Omen above ground in numerous areas of the lands between. That is where the Omen Killers come in, devoid of conscience and prepared to kill any born touched by the primordial crucible. Welcome to Elden Lore, our ongoing weekly series diving into the lore of the people, places, and monsters of the lands between. If you're new to the channel, welcome. We hope you enjoy our content. Our goal is to provide context and background to the world of Elden Ring by lifting the veil on the stories of its smaller players, so we can all better understand the sheer scope of this sandbox we've been playing in. With over 100 episodes in this series, we hope you find what you're looking for. But if not, just leave a comment letting us know what topics you'd like to see explored. If you enjoy our content, please consider subscribing to the channel, or joining our community's Discord, where we talk all things FromSoft. Whether you sub or not, thank you for joining us today, and with that said, let's get back to the topic at hand. The Omen Killers seem like a straightforward enemy at first. Their purpose lies right there in their name. They kill omens. Their armor gives us some insight into the brutality with which they carry out these deeds. The Omen Smirk mask is described as a mask with long, hideously twisted horns worn by the Omen Killers. Bears the smirking face of an elder, twisted in wicked delight. This visage is carved in the image of the evil spirits that haunt the Omen in their nightmares. This mask clearly portrays the face of an Omen with horns twisting from its head. So they not only murdered any Omen they hunted down, but mocked them as a species by creating a fear of seeing their own twisted faces reflected back at them before their deaths. We can even find sleeping Omen that seem to be whimpering in their slumber. The Omenkiller robe provides more context to their reputation. Robe worn by Omen Killers, butchers of twisted conscience. Its thick apron is worn in remembrance of Rolo, the progenitor of the Omen Killers, and a perfumer of antiquity. Even to those who disdain the Omen, these men were known as butchers, which expresses just how brutal their practices were. Their weapons are also a clear sign of the callousness with which they approach their work. They wield two great Omen Killer cleavers. The blade of this huge, loathsome cleaver comprises a row of amputated Omen horns, weapon of slaughter wielded by Omen Killers. The hideous horns cause blood loss, adding vibrant colors to the ongoing mayhem. The fact that these horns are described as amputated and not taken or cut from Omen is an interesting detail, because it implies a surgical precision to this order you wouldn't expect, unless you remember their origins. After defeating the Fell Twins in the capital outskirts, we are rewarded with the Omenkiller Rolo ashes, which tell the story of the first Omen Killer. Ashen remains in which spirits yet dwell, used to summon the spirit of Omenkiller Rolo. Spirit of Rolo, known as the first Omen Killer. Once a famous perfumer, Rolo imbibed a physic to rid himself of emotion, thus enabling him to enact his nightmarish labor, hunting the Omen. It would seem that the very first of these men was a perfumer, essentially a doctor to those living in the lands between, as the perfumer's physics were originally meant to heal and not harm. You can learn more about the perfumers in another video of ours diving into their lore, but the short version is that in times of war, they were essentially conscripted and forced to use their knowledge for combat instead of healing. If we take this into account when considering Rolo, It seems as if he never truly wanted to hunt down and murder the Omen. Otherwise, why would he need a physic to make him numb to his own actions? Even Rolo himself saw how despicable it was to hunt these people for the crime of being touched by the crucible before their birth, and the only way for him to carry out his assignment was to turn himself into a monster. It's not known whether or not he intended for his concoction to be used by others and for Omen Killers to essentially become their own order of perfumers, but unfortunately, this is what came to pass. By the time we've made our way to the lands between, it seems the Omen Killers are no longer hunting Omen. We face them in a number of areas, and only one of them is found anywhere near Omen. This Omen Killer can be fought outside the lower capital church site of Grace, not far from an entrance to the sewers below the capital city. We know that these sewers were used as a dumping ground for those Omen that did not have their horns excised, and we believe the Omen Killer stationed above them is there to act as a form of warden against those that may wander out. If an Omen is unlucky enough to be caught escaping the sewers, this Omen Killer will strike them down where they stand. Contrary to this hunter holding the line against his prey, 2 Omen Killers can be found around the Volcano Manor, which has no association with Omen. However, we know Rykard gathered the strong in order to devour them and gain their strength, so you could assume that these Omen Killers were eventually meant to become one with the Serpent, as they were known to be ferocious warriors. The first Omen Killer we're likely to encounter in our travels across the lands between is actually under the employ of Sir Gideon Ofnir. We know that Ensha led the attack on the Albanorg village in search of half of the rolled medallion that was hidden there, and it would appear that he utilized the strength of an Omen Killer to bring this town to its knees and slaughter most of its inhabitants. It's no surprise that one who has removed emotion from their very being would have no issue working with Gideon Ofnir. He needed strength, and the Omen Killer could provide it. Omen Killers already hunted and murdered innocents considered abhorrent to the Golden Order, so killing Albanorics, who were also seen as lesser under the Golden Order, would be like any other day. He simply traded gnarled horns for silver blood, indulging in the one-sided battle that was handed to him by a master whose disregard for life rivaled his own. There are 2 other Omen Killers we can encounter during our travels, one of which watches over the Perfumers' ruins, while the other fights alongside Miranda, the Bladed Bloom, in the Perfumers' grotto. This implies to us that the physic that suppresses the Omen Killer's emotions is not a one-and-done permanent solution. Perhaps, the effects of this physic can actually wear off, and when they do, the Omen Killers are forced to reckon with the horrifying things they've done to so many innocents. In order to keep themselves from ever having to truly face the atrocities they've committed, they need to return to the Perfumer's grotto, to Miranda, so they can continue crafting the tincture that suppresses their emotions. This would mean that the Omen Killers, these ferocious warriors, willing to murder those who have committed no true crime, are actually cowards, hiding behind their practices, knowing full well that the weight of their own crimes against humanity would crush them should they ever allow their physics to truly dissipate. Ironically, should this ever happen, the masks they use to strike fear into the hearts of the Omen would instead mock the Omen Killers, showing them the visage of the countless lives they've taken and forcing them to face the true horror of their actions. Thank you for joining us for this week's Lore Dive. What are your thoughts on the Omen Killers? Did Rolo intend for his physic to be used on others, or was it meant to be a way for him to deal with the things he knew he must do? Knowing that the Omen Killers were once perfumers, do you think they were the ones who removed the horns from infant Omen, killing them in the process? Why do the Omen Killers who no longer hunt Omen still wear the Omen Smirk mask? How many times did I say Omen in this episode? Please leave your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell, and set notifications to all so you never miss out on any of our lore dives. We look forward to seeing you again next week for more Elden Lore.